Welcome. I'm Barry Funkhouser. That's right, Barry Funkhouser. And I'm not out on the farm today. I'm here at home with indie rock musician Johnny Marr. Hello.
Hi Barry, nice to be on the farm.
You said I look like I'm in Bali with all of my indoor plants, but
Yeah,
it just rained here, so I had to bring in all the indoor plants back inside, or else they would have flooded out. We haven't had rain here in California in like a year.
I believe so. Yeah. Oh well, congrats. I hope it sticks around for a while. Yeah. I like California, but it is that's a little bit scary.
Yeah, where are you right now? Where do you
I
live?
mean, I live just outside of Manchester in the north of England. It's a bit like, I guess it's kind of like Seattle and Portland mixed together. Yeah,
It's always rainy,
which I also like.
cloudy. It's sort of like that
Yeah,
here
it's
in California in the when the marine layer comes in for like half the day.
I
It
know.
kind of feels like Northern Ireland for a minute. Feels like I'm in Donegal surfing.
Okay, right, yeah. Well, I'm in London a lot of the time. I haven't been to California for a while since all this craziness happened, but I'll be over there ASAP, hopefully.
As soon as we can, man. You ready to tour again? Are you a tour guy or are you a studio guy?
I was a studio guy for 30 odd years, and then something happened. Well, I joined Modest Mouse and I became a tour guide in a big way, so I'm a tour guide now. But I've been asked recently about it's a fair question. Almost every interview is like, well, how has it been in lockdown? How's it been, not being able to see audiences and all of that? Well, that's been kind of crap. But the what I did was I then flipped back to being studio rat, because I was a studio rat for so many years. I didn't like touring. I didn't like touring in the Smiths. I just didn't dig it. Um, and partly, though, to be fair, was because I just was so obsessed with being in the studio. I wanted to know every bit of minutia about the recording process, which I did learn and I absorbed, and that was great. And then, as I say, from I guess 2005 when I joined Modest Mouse, it was such a great time touring with those guys and playing those songs and those audiences and the whole thing. And it was predominantly in the States, so it was great. The whole culture of it was interesting for me on many levels, and I really dug it. And then so that was a big jumping off point for me. And then so when I started with the solo records, it helps, having a really great band who are great every night is when you're out front. That's a plus. So really, I'm a touring guy, but in a big way. But during this period, I would have made a record anyway. It was time to make an album, but the kind of studio rat in me kind of came back, having nowhere to go.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about Modest Mouse too, because like, I'm a radio guy, okay? I know radio songs. I'm not an album guy, but I love music. I'm probably the equivalent of somebody that knows, the difference between an onion and a bell pepper in terms of music. And then I went looking at your library. I mean, you started when you were like 13 years old and you've been on everything good, which is incredible. So I don't think there's anybody comparatively that I can ask that question to if you're like a guy that likes to be out in front or
Yeah,
behind, and you're both, which is such a professional answer. It's like
yeah.
natural growth, right?
Had it not been for the pandemic, though, I would have. I mean, I always make records, and I find myself in the role of producer. But I would have had it. I would have just answered you straight out. I'm a touring guy these days because all the reasons I said. I love the energy of it. I love the unpredictability of it. A bit that whole kind of being in the moment, and I guess as well now, because I'm the front man, and no respecting, so many people over the years. No lead singer's got any business knowing what kind of microphones should be on the cymbals, and so that was my role for many, many years. And I realized that oh no, it's happened. I have evolved into a frontman as soon as I just got tired of those technical questions. I don't give a shit. But yeah, so this new album.
Now,
I
now
got
you
back
have
into
to
my
give a
kind
shit
of
because you probably know all the answers to those questions now, don't you? You know what kind of mic
that,
goes into a drum.
that's right. I do
Now you
know
just
all of
have to
that
sit
stuff.
there
Yeah.
and like say, I know, but I'm not going to say it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I get terribly impatient these days, which I think is another good qualification for a singer. Every singer I know just can't really be. Oh, with the exception of Matt Johnson, perhaps from the other. He was a really fine musician, fine producer, but he takes years in between records, so he's a bit of an anomaly.
And I was going to ask you about that Modest Mouse connection because I mean, Modest Mouse been around for a long time. I think since like 2000 something. Hit after hit, alternative rock, and then kind of leaning into indie lately. So and they have a lot of like respect in the industry. So how did you and them get all connected? Where did that start?
Well, it started. I got a phone call. It's the one time when a record company have contacted me and said, "Oh, can our artist get your phone number?" And this was 2005. A couple of years before that, I met Elliott Smith, and he was telling me about the Portland scene, and I wasn't really digging. In early 2000s, I didn't really like what was happening in guitar music in the UK. I just wasn't really feeling it, and I've always liked American music and American alternative music. You know, anyone who knows anything, you know, I suppose it's the same over there. You know, you kind of England, America from being a boy. But I got it into Built the Spill first. I really like
Wow,
the Built,
interesting.
really like that band. Yeah, and the Shins were kind of I quite like that.
What about Ben
And then I met
Cole? I
Elliot.
was around there at that time where the Bends were coming out, and there was a lot of guitarists because there's a lot of venues to play in Portland and Seattle too. So you can singer
Exactly. Yeah.
songwriter all the way up and down and like have some success. And late 2000s, there was a thing happening, right?
Well, this is early 2000, late 90s, man. Elliot was doing, yeah, you know. So you know, you had Quasi, you know, who I liked. So I was digging this sort of Portland stuff, and then Elliot really filled me on. I was asking him about Portland, and so anyway, when I looked more into that music, all roads were then really led to Modest Mouse. I really liked the album Moon and Antarctica. I thought it was a really good record. So I liked them, and then just weirdly, their guitar player left, and Isaac thought it would be a good idea to get me to come over and play with him. So he called me. I'd never spoken to him before, and we had a long conversation, and he just flat out just asked me to join the band, and I was like, I don't know you, but uh, I'll come over and we'll try an experiment. I'll come over for 10 days. I had a plane ticket for 10 days, and I got over there, and the very first night we wrote two, maybe three pretty good songs. On the very first night, we wrote Dashboard, and we wrote a song called We've Got Everything, and the bones of something else. And I kind of thought, I woke up about 4 a.m. jet lagged like crazy. And I was like, did I just write a kind of the next like indie anthem with this stranger? This sounds pretty interesting. And
This stranger.
yeah, and I've been doing that sort of stuff since I was a kid. When I was a little, I used to do that when I say little, when I was 13, 14, 15, bands in Manchester would invite me to come and jam, or I'd hear that so and so had a Telecaster that I needed to see, and I would get two buses across town and just turn up at a band's rehearsal place and say, okay, let's do it. So it was the equivalent of that, the transatlantic equivalent. So a few days each day, more and more band members would appear. So it's just me and Isaac the first night, and Tom Peloso, the keys guy and utility guy, just us three. And then next day, another mouse would arrive, and then next day, two other mice would arrive. And before we knew it, we'd written a bunch of songs. It's got very, very prolific now. Because I've been doing this so long, I know when something good's happening. And about day 5, 6, I was stood in the room with these guys who are all very, very interesting fellas. and we just hit it off straight away. And I just thought, I don't know what this is we're doing, but it feels really, really good. It feels great. And it was good that I couldn't analyze it. You know, some groups you're in, or some groups you hear, you can go, oh, okay, there's a bit of the Chili Peppers in there, or there's a bit of Radiohead in there, or there's a bit of the Who in there, or the Smiths, or whatever. But with Modest Mouse is one of the things I liked about him in the first place. I just couldn't work out. I just knew I liked it. Couldn't work out their influences. So when I was stood there, I just went, this feels really good. I just phoned my manager and I said, listen, I'm going to stay for a while. And then we got so tight, that experience writing songs and being friends and learning to be friends, and we just hit it off. There's a real brotherhood in that band. It just would have been too fucking weird to bail, you know? So I just stayed for 5 years, 4 years, something.
It's so interesting that you, the way you analyze that and you get to that level. It's sort of like, I relate to that because I went to architecture school before I got into radio and I became a producer. So every time I think of productions, I think of it sort of like building a structure. And I heard you talking about how you come up with titles of your records and how sometimes they come first and sometimes they don't. And this Fever Dreams parts 1 through 4 came first. And then you're like, what are the 4 parts? I don't know. And I find that so endearing. And I want to get into that. Like, where does that come from?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's a good question. Well, that's interesting that you're into architecture, because I know I'm a fan of architecture. I won't say I know a lot about it, but I'm a real fan of it. And I used to try and think of songs as spaces as well, which was really exciting. Sometimes it was good, sometimes it was nonsense. So you'll know that when these ideas, you get an abstract idea, and in the case of that, this title just arrived. I think being able to analyze it, I think that Fever Dreams Parts 1 to 4, I was kind of like,
was it like a real fever dream? Did you have it in your head before?
No, what happened was that the title, I was like walking around the studio and the title came to me. And I know well enough now that you have these titles that you think are great, or you have a line that you think is great. And then a few hours later, if you write it down, a few hours later, you go, that isn't great. But at least I wrote it down, okay? But then it's a little bit of a rule of thumb with me with words, particularly titles and lines and stuff, that I go with them and then you live with them. And then some of them just feel like they've always been there. This Fever Dreams Parts 1 to 4, I was like, that feels like, is that already a thing? And then actually with a bit of thought, because this was about 15, 16 months ago now, I realized that when I was a kid, the Human League brought out a record called Dignity of Labor Parts 1 and 2, and it was a 45. And there was something intriguing to me about that, and I think that stuck in. I think the parts thing maybe came from that. I just like the idea of a parts 1 and 2, and then with a little more thinking about it, I was musing on it. It's like, oh yeah, I remember there was a Motown record, Keep on Trucking, Eddie Kendricks, and that had part 2 on the B side, and the Isley Brothers had a part 1 and 2. So it was back in the recesses of my mind somewhere. There was a thing saying to me, part of this culture, that you reservoir of influences that you draw on, there's a thing you haven't done before. You've never done it. But what is interesting from an artistic point of view was, as you say, was like, then it gave me then a framework. So it was like, well, what does this mean? How am I going to do it? And to be to break it down, I got 4 whiteboards. I usually have whiteboards knocking around the studio, but I had 4 whiteboards in a line on the studio, and I had some songs were nearly complete, and other songs were just an idea. And then you'd have a song where you think that one's going to be real, but that's a banger. I'll get around to that. And because I had these 4 parts, I was able to then go, okay, finish that one, because that'll go real well on part 1. And then I was like, okay, well, that should go on. That'd be pretty good on the 3rd part. And then I was imagining the audience having heard part 1, what would be good for them to hear on part 2. And that gave me a framework and a structure for my process, which was just great the way art works.
It's
You know,
brilliant.
and
Like,
you were. Oh, I mean, I could talk about this stuff all day because you know,
it's
art.
like you talk about them like they're pieces of work, like they're pieces of art. And
That's exactly right.
the process is so fascinating because everybody has a different process, you know, and you've been doing it since you were, I mean, you picked up a guitar at some point and you went ding, 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 ding. Is that right? Is that how that started? Because I read somewhere that that was the first thing that you played was the Bond thing and then
It's the,
theme. And,
it's the first thing if you grew up. I was born in 1963, so
oh, by the way,
when I
Halloween,
started.
baby, happy birthday. I hope you have a good one there. Is it,
Thank you,
my
Barry.
mom's birthday is the same time. Is it, do you always get a Halloween cake on your birthday? And are you upset about that or do you like it?
No, we get two birthday cakes and a Halloween cake because it's my wife's birthday as well.
Oh, wow. What, how did you work that out? Well, that's a whole other story. But tell me about the
Yeah.
Bond thing and how that started.
Well, I started the first guitar I could actually get a tune out of. I had when I was 8, and that dates me to about 1971, 72. And by then, in the UK, the only equivalent I could say really growing up during that time is like you growing up maybe with Star Wars or something like that. I mean, maybe not you particularly, but you know, it's everyone knows down, down, da, 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 da. Everyone knows what it is. And in the UK, James Bond was it is that word that I don't particularly like, but it is iconic. And it was always it was traditionally a guitar tune, down, 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 down. It was all about that riff. And then for many years, it was overtaken by different kind of thing. They all the ghost of John Barry's original score was always adhered to by people like David Arnold, who were very, very skilled, but it wasn't about the guitar per se. So when my friend Hans Zimmer called me up about that he'd been asked to do the score, I was the first person he called because he was like, quite rightly, we need to put the guitar back in this thing. And believe me, I try to put it everywhere. Everywhere, place it had no right being in some of those scenes. I would play it. There's some delicate love scene, someone's dying, down, 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 down. It was everywhere. There was a slight, I won't call it an intervention, but there was a couple of, let's say there was a couple of meetings, and where I was out vetoed. So
They didn't tap you on the shoulder and go, not right now.
pretty much, yeah. So I attacked it with a missionary-like zeal, Barry. And hey, when you see the movie, it's where it should be. I'd still like it in more places, but it's definitely where it should be.
Is there an artist cut of that somewhere laying around that you'll release someday?
Yes, call my phone.
Yeah, a ringtone package, exactly. Ding, 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 ding. Okay, so you like brand new stuff that has no definition, no theme. You like kind of discovery. I found out. Like
Yeah,
you stumbled upon Electoral Soul, which is like this fascination
yeah,
with gospel and soul and electronic music. Talk
yeah.
through that.
Okay, well, when I started the solo records in 2011, it was my intention to avoid singing about my own feelings as much as possible, because there were so many people doing it really badly, or that it seemed to be a real thing in vogue. In was a thing that I found a bit annoying in music, and I think it comes from mainstream culture. To be fair, I think there's so many. I'm being facetious. There's so many people who are much more skilled at it than I am, and some of whom I've worked with, like Matt Johnson from The, for example. So I've seen it really done very, very well. But I thought, well, the bands that influenced me when I was a kid, some of them, Lou Reed wasn't always singing about himself, and Wire certainly weren't singing about their feelings, and Susie and the Banshees and bands like that. I thought, well, what happened to people singing about conceptual stuff? Why does it all have to be this earnest kind of thing? So I had a bit of an attitude about that. So a lot of my songs, I mean, one song in particular called Dynamo, the second album, is actually, I found a way of talking about architecture. That's a song about a building, but I was able, because it's about a building, I was able to sing a love song. It's about a modernist building.
Oh
So
boy, I'm so happy you told me that.
yeah,
I'm gonna listen to that next.
the song is entirely, and there's another song. Do you know about the crystal chain letters? You ever heard about this?
Uh-huh.
It's a really interesting thing. It was a bunch of architects. Corbusier was one of them, um, and this was, I think, in the 30s, maybe the 50s. They decided, a bunch of these eminent European architects, to just exchange letters in an artistic exchange, and they eventually, it's all collated in a very expensive, rare book. This correspondence, they did basically essentially just described designed glass structures in the sky, high-rise glass structures, beautiful train links, and these amazing, beautiful. That's why it's called the crystal chain letters, glass buildings.
Wow.
So one of my songs, which is called Spiral Cities, is inspired by that idea. So I was working along those lines and digging that. But then, to get back to your question, the part of the craft of songwriting, there are some times when you just can't be such a smart ass. It's a nice idea, but the piece of music demands that you sing something personal. And that's happened to me more and more over the solo records, with a few songs here and there that the tunes were just so pretty. I had to put something of myself in it. And surprise, surprise, people like those songs. And
Yeah.
they like them because there's some humanity in it. And I learned that lesson. And then, so when I was starting this record, the first thing I wanted to write was the single. It doesn't always work out that way, believe me, but I had this idea that I would write kind of an electro banger. I thought it'd be a good wake up, for the first kickoff of the record. And so I set myself about the task of that. And I was in this room and I was thinking, well, yeah, but come on, what about this business of connecting with people? Because that's where I was at. This was just before the pandemic, so it wasn't anything to do with what happened. Fever Dreams turned out to be a great title, considering what happened over the next 18 months. It's not, when I think of that, that was my daytime experience. It was like being in a fever dream. This is during the day. But anyway, I was sat thinking about, when you've got a notion, like I was saying about ideas, you just can't ignore it. And I had this notion. I was like, okay, I think I'm going to have to go there on this record. I'm going to have to be a bit more personal, not necessarily my feelings, but try and connect with people, try and sing, have some humanity in there. And again, the sort of art student kind of thing in me just then went, okay, well, who does that really well without being kind of corny? And I was like, Al Green does it really well.
Yeah, he does.
And Curtis Mayfield does it with some social commentary very, very well. And Sly Stone on Family Affair and stuff. I was like, wow, well, soul music is pretty good at doing that. And that's how I came up with the title Spirit, Power and Soul, because I wanted to do something that was like, could have been any of those artists, could have been Aretha Franklin, but married to an indie rock musician. I thought, well, I don't think an indie rock musician's done this before. So I got very excited about the idea of, I had the concept before I wrote the song of this sort of electro soul. So then I just drove myself, as you do sometimes with songs, drove myself around the bend, coming up with an appropriate title.
You're not really a musician, Johnny. You're an explorer. Because you're out there discovering brand new sounds and things. You're a musistronaut, you know? It's amazing talking to you and hearing about the process of everything.
Thank you.
Incredible.
Yeah, well, it's nice to talk to someone who understands the kind of who's interested in the art process, Barry. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Well, it all comes back to nature, I think. And you just started going through your exploration about philosophy and human attraction. And I sort of did the same thing with beekeeping. I spent the last year
Really.
learning about how to harvest honey and beeswax. And a year ago, I couldn't do something like this, but this is just 100%
That
beeswax right there.
that is amazing. I heard an amazing thing about bees yesterday. In that, well, you'll know about this, but that when they go and want to tell the rest of the hive where to pollinate, um, they do this elaborate dance with their hinds. And when it was, what they did was, I think this was maybe in the 60s, the the people, who would it have been? Anyway, I don't know. Whoever examines bees, people like yourself, painted they painted scientists painted tiny little fluorescent dots on the end of these bees, and then they filmed them and then slowed it right down, and they realized that what they were doing were would put their tails, if that's the right, or their whatever their asses is, at the angle to the sun, and we're talking to the nth degree here, which other bees were able to read exactly where they needed to go and pollinate. I
It's an
mean, you must know
amazing thing. It's
a
just
ton of shit
watching
about
them.
that.
Yes. And it's a female driven society too, so that might tell you something about it, you know what I'm saying? But up here
Right.
where I live, there's a lot of professional beekeepers, so I've been learning from the best, and you're absolutely right. It's so amazing. It's sort of like they're going, "Hey, it's over there. Hey, all the stuff is over
Yeah.
there." And they package it based on like, if you ever had hot avocado honey, it comes from an avocado tree. Lemon honey comes from a lemon tree. So all that has like seasons and stuff. It's just fascinating about the life cycle of, life on Earth, which probably equates a lot to psychology and where your head's at, because
Uh,
an
and
understanding.
the social structures as well is what little I know about that is really amazing. I mean, the evolution of it is, oh man, it puts humans to shame in more ways than one. It really does. If humans want to feel bad about themselves, you need to look at what the plight of the bee, which you will know all about.
Yep, yep. They only live 30 days. That's all I'll say about that. They do all that in 30 days. Well, Johnny Marr, you're so awesome to talk to, man. Let's talk about
Oh,
Fever Dreams parts 1 through 4 in a little more detail. Who's on it? Give me a shocker. Tell me exactly what to tune in for.
well, actually, I I forgot to ask. I've collaborated with so many people over the years, and I'm asked about it. And I realized I always forget to ask people to come and collaborate with me. It's my intention to occasionally, and then I just don't get around to it. But on this record, there was a American group years ago called Family of the Year, and there was the singer in that group, Meredith Sheldon, I absolutely love. And I managed
Yeah,
to
they had a
talk
hit
her into
called "Until the Day I Die." I think it
so
was
good.
very like pop punk, post punk kind of thing,
Yeah.
covered in
Well,
sleeve tattoos, probably.
Meredith she's out in Massachusetts, and I managed to bring her. She's on a lot of the record. She sings a lot of background vocals, and she's been kind of like the secret weapon on this record. And then there's another woman called Simone Marie from Primal Scream who plays bass on some tracks. So
Yeah.
that was cool. That
Yeah.
was cool. Other than that, though, my band my band is so good, and we've been together now since 2011. It's the same four fellas. We brought in this new guy on keys and things, but you know, uh, in a way, when I worked on the Beck record, which I always forget blank on the title of that record, but um, I was really struck by the unity of his band. He was out front and his name's on the record, but um, he had a really good band. And my band kind of do a similar kind of thing to that period of when Midnight Vultures was the album that I did with him. But the well, I did 2 songs, but the anyway, so it's a similar kind of setup where, you know, my name's up front, but you know, you've got this real good kind of crack team. So same guys, we're doing if anyone's interested, we're doing a live stream recording thing that from my studio space on November the 10th through 14th, so everyone can see what we kind of do during the daytime. It was a very, very deliberately we've done it as a daytime thing, because I got asked to, you know, it's a lot of musicians being asked to do these live stream things, and for me, going out doing a kind of phony show where you're out on stage and you've got all the lights, but there's no one in the venue. I could see that working for some kind of acoustic people or people who do a more intimate thing. But I just thought, well, hey, you know, we'll just let some cameras come in and see what happens when we rehearse. And so people can really see what a good band I've got during that.
Wow.
So,
that's
what I'm
November 10th through 14th, you said? All right.
Yeah.
We'll get the link and we'll click it down there so everybody can check that out, because that's cool.
Thank
that's
you.
like a POV thing. You're just going to be hanging out, writing music, making music with the band?
No, we're performing. We're playing our songs. We just go, right, what would be a cool set? And we just play it with a bunch of cameras there. But does that seem the more real thing? It's like, well, this is what we do in the day. So yeah.
Okay, well, Johnny Marr,
So
we're running out of time here. They're going to yell at me if I leave you any longer. So I'm going to ask you one more question, and I ask everybody this. I'm going to ask you, and your answer is the right answer no matter what, okay? Would you rather get into a battle to the death with one duck-sized horse or 100 horse-sized ducks, and why?
The first one is a duck-sized horse.
A horse-sized duck.
Oh, right.
Or 100 little horses.
Oh, yeah. It'd have to be 100 little horses. It'd have to be 100 little horses, because I would maybe have a good chance against the first 4, okay? And then this gets a little bit gnarly. I would then fashion 2 clubs from the defeated little guys, and that would buy me some time
all the way out, man. That's great.
That would buy me some time against the next 7. And then by then I'm just so fucking worn out. I just lay down, and that's a good question.
You know, a lot of people go for the horse-sized duck because they think they could, you know, get behind it, take it out. But I've never heard the angst of fight that you would put up against 11 duck-sized horses would take you out, I'm hearing. But you put up a good fight.
When you put it that way, I'm kind of really wussing out there. I'd probably make it to, I'd say, will you say there's 100 of those guys? Oh man, I'd say I'd be blooded. It'd be a very bloody defeat of 42.
Okay, 42. That's a good, you know.
I've just kind of redeemed myself a little bit there.
You tried your best. See, this is my fever dream, Johnny. This is what's going on in my head. Johnny Marr, thank you so much for being here at home. And for everyone that wants to follow you along, what's the thing that you use online? What's your social media thing that you talk to the people at?
I guess it's Johnny Margram.
On Instagram?
Johnny Margram. Yeah, on Instagram, yeah. Yeah,
right.
On Instagram.
We will follow up with the horse duck battle on Instagram with you. And your album comes out when? February next year, is that right?
February, yeah, but there's out there now is the part one is out there now on Spotify and all of that stuff. So part one's there now, and part two's going to be out in about 10 days, I think.
Pretty good. Okay, halfway to whatever, however far you go. It might go longer than 4, probably. I'm just saying it here.
I like it. I like it. Thanks, Barry. It's been really nice meeting you, man.
Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time. We'll see you in the States.
Yeah. Have fun on the farm.
88.5 FM, KCSN, and KCSN HD1 Northridge, Los Angeles. KSBR and KSBR HD1 Mission Viejo. A service of California State University Northridge and Saddleback College. Member-supported public radio. Streaming on the web at 885fm.org.